Well, if 1824 is the start of our museum, the date of its foundation, is 1894 another very important date. It is the moment when Ernesto Schiaparelli became director of the museum. We are exactly 70 years after the foundation of the museum. Ernesto Schiaparelli arrived and realized that the position of the Museo Egizio was not anymore what it used to be. Of course, in 1824, we were the most ancient, the first museum, Egyptian museum, to be founded. The museum that you see nowadays in Tahrir Square was founded in 1902, Tahrir Square in Cairo, of course, in Egypt. So we were the first museum to be founded. But in the meantime, 70 years later, other museums had been born and they had intensive excavation in Egypt. And so our position in the international comparison was not so important anymore. And he realized that in order to change it was important to put research at center. People had to go back to the field, they had to start excavation in order not only to bring back objects, but also to know the archaeological context, to know the story related to the objects, and to be able to understand them as historical documents. And so he did. In 1903, he started his wonderful adventure known as Italian mission, archaeological mission in Egypt. See here, we see all these coffins just found in the tomb of Kha and Bazet in the Valley of the Queens. His excavations campaign lasted from 1903 to 1920, and then they went on again also after his death. He passed away in 1927. We have in the museum 14,000 glass negatives. They show us the very moment of the excavation. You see here, for instance, in Ashmunain, where the excavation started, and I actually excavated in 13 places from north to the south. Look at here, we are in Mataria, what is called nowadays Heliopolis in Cairo, and now it's all completely fully crowded, but then was the very beginning. You see the very moment when the statue of Pendua or Nefertari was found in Durham, Medina. So the documents give us such important information. Like this one, we are on the 15th of February 1906. The workmen of Schiaparelli found opening. This opening is the opening of a shaft. Is 8 meters 50. At the end of the shaft there are stairs, and at the end of the stairs there are stones blocking the passage. Then a second corridor blocked again by stones, and when he took them away, he found a door, and he realized that the door was still sealed. He realized that for the first time after 3,500 years, he was entering a completely full burial chamber, and he was rediscovering the burial chamber, how it was left 3,500 years before. So he found there the sarcophagus of Kha still covered by this linen, the sarcophagus of Merit also still covered, and all the objects, the burial offerings that the couple brought with them in the burial chamber in order to assure them all what they needed to live forever. This is a rendering of the drawing that Schiaparelli made for His Majesty King Victor Emmanuel III to explain the magnificence of his discovery. And look at workmen at the very moment when they come out of the tomb with all the objects, 467 objects, they are all now here in Turin. It is the only burial assemblage of the New Kingdom complete house outside of Egypt. Because you have to know that when Schiaparelli brought here the mummies of Kha and Merit, the mummies which were discovered inside the tomb, he decided not to unwrap them, but to preserve them the way they were. So he said that there would be a day where people would be able to look inside the mummy without damaging them. Of course, in 1906, that might have seemed like a dream. But nowadays, this is possible. Now you are tonight going to see something that the discoverer of the tomb was never able to do. It was never able to see besides the linen and to look at Cha. And here you go. As the unwrapping goes away virtually, we see how Cha at this moment looks like. We see that only little bit of skin is preserved on the back. We see that on the front, most of the remains are just skeletal remains. And we will see, probably understand also why later on. But we also see that it is completely covered in amulets and jewels. And in a museum, rich in material culture, but absolutely poor in jewels, Schiaparelli did not see that he had one of the most important treasures from ancient Egypt. He was never able to see what you are seeing today. And make no mistake, I will never, ever, ever unwrap the mummy in order to take out the jewels. We have to preserve the human remains, but we are able now to look at them, to understand them, and to explain them. First of all, look at this wonderful collar around the neck of Cha. It is the so-called shebiu, or gold of honor. It's an amazing piece. Is a gift that the king would give to his collaborators to compensate them for what they have done for him. Or look at the breast where you see the scarab. The scarab is hanging from a golden necklace, and the scarab is as a golden frame, and is probably inscribed with Book of the Dead chapter 30a or 30b, where the deceased speaks to his heart in order to ask his heart to tell the truth to Osiris. And look at the spine. We see that he had arthrosis. We see that also on the knee, and we see exactly the same at the elbow. Actually, we say that he had the tennis player syndrome. Of course, he was working in his activity, so due to his work, probably that's what it caused inflammation to his elbow. But look at this. He still have his brain, his heart, the bronchial tubes, the lungs, the liver. It was not eviscerated. It was not excerebrated. Well, the heart is not strange that the heart is left there. The heart would normally stay there because it was seen as the seat of memory. So it would only be preserved with the body. But why are the other organs there? We know from Herodotus, the Greek historian who lived in the 5th century BC, and he wrote a second book of his so-called histories devoted to Egypt. He said that there are different ways of mummifications, and those who are poor do not have excerebration and evisceration, which is reserved for the elite. But look at the jewels. We know that Cha could have afforded a proper mummification, but why didn't he do that? Well, this shows how much we have to learn. Look at the heart scarab here, by the way. We are still working in finding a way to be able to read on the back and to read the hieroglyphs. We can't, at the moment, we can't with the CT scan which we did. There are CT scan typical for human remains. We could use an industrial CT scan, but we have to be sure that it doesn't damage in any way the mummy. And if you look the way the jewels and the amulets are disposed on the body, they are disposed according to Book of the Dead chapter 156. So all the rituality had been followed in order to be sure that Cha, whose title is Imi Erkaut Nesut, responsible of the works for the pharaoh, well, all the jewels, all the amulets were there to assure that he would live forever like the sun god, in order to assure that death was not the final stage. Death was just a vehemezut, a new beginning, so that Ra could live forever. And it is really incredible that now we can look at him, we can look at the wonderful jewels he has, and we can understand how rich his burial was. And we have to thank Schiaparelli, who was so humble to decide not to unwrap the mummy, but to preserve it to posterity. You can understand then that when people ask me, well, it's amazing, we can still see his brains, we can still see his organs. Would you allow to do invasive analysis on the organs? And my answer is, of course, no. Well, come up with some other solution. Come up with a way where you can tell me that you are able to analyze them without damaging the mummy when we can talk. Otherwise, we have to preserve it for posterity, as I said. But let's have a look also at his wife, Merit. If Ra is Imi Erkaut Nesut, responsible of the works of the pharaohs, his wife, Merit, has the title Nebet Per, Lady of the House. She probably died before her husband. That's also why her coffin seems like belonging to two different typology. The lid is covered with a golden foil, while the box has an alternation of bitumen and gold, probably because the coffin was meant for Ra. She died earlier, and so they had to readjust and to finish up the coffin quite early, probably for an unexpected death. Well, here we go. We are able to look at Merit. And first of all, I have to tell you that while we were working for making the ritual unwrapping, we discovered something completely unexpected that really surprised us. She has a wig. Actually, don't let you be fooled by the rendering that you have now on your screen, because it seems like the wig is broken. Actually, the wig is continuing, but because of the emission of the golden color, it seems as if it is broken in two pieces, but actually she has a wig of real hair still preserved. That's amazing, because in the museum we have a wig of Merit, which is exhibited in our permanent collection, and we also have a wig carrier, a wonderful chest made to contain her wig. And then look again at the wonderful jewels she has. Look at this wonderful waza color, which covers her chest, and is a color actually is the materiality of it, of course, is of gold, but is a render in three-dimensional, what we normally see depicted in the coffins, in the so-called yellow coffins, where you see this wonderful color on just around the neck and the upper chest. And then let's look inside. She still has her brain. She was not excerebrated. And then look at the way the chest, the spine, and the thorax is. You see, it's a kind of chaotic. The spine is broken, and so is the thorax. What happened? Well, we do believe that when it was discovered and it was taken out of the coffin and it had to go up the shaft, it could not possibly go horizontally, it had to be put vertical. And probably due to the gravity, the spine collapsed, and with it all the ribs, and that's why you see it in the condition it is. But look at the wonderful jewel she had, this wonderful was a color, those earrings which were so heavy that they fell off the ears. And also she has rings, and she has a wonderful belt made of shells, probably coming from the Red Sea. So also she was prepared in a beautiful manner. She was prepared in a very rich way, and one might wonder why the brains remained inside. Why wasn't she exacerbated? And that's something that, we have to go back and study and to understand. Sometimes we tend to oversimplify about mummification, about the way bodies were preserved, but actually more study is needed. Here you see the belt I was talking to you about, and the earrings that she still has in one hand, and the wonderful bracelet still in the arm. So you must think what must have been the richness of this burial, richness that we can confirm by the wonderful burial assemblage, by those 467 objects which we found in the tomb and which are now preserved in Turin. I do realize every day how lucky we are to have this complete burial assemblage and to house the only complete New Kingdom tombs preserved outside of Egypt. You have probably seen in the images that she's way shorter of her husband. The length of the husband was between 1 meter and 68 centimeter and 1 meter 74. She was probably 1 meter 47. And she probably died unexpectedly and quite young, while her husband was probably already in the 60s, as we can see from the features, from the arthrosis, from other features in the mummies. And 60 is, of course, a quite old age at that time.